I think we've already heard some great conversations today. I think we've already seen and heard some examples, right, of how organizations are tapping into the power of AR and VR to open up new possibilities, right, when it comes to new ways to connect, to express, and to collaborate. I think in many ways, right, some of these are also glimmers of the future of where we're headed, right? A future that we'll be able to connect in a more immersive way, more authentic way, really underpinned by the ability to do that, right, wherever we are located, right? So no longer held to the bounds of physical distance. Some of the experiences, right, are still several years out, right? Some of which are going to use technology that may not even exist today quite yet. But the work that's happening today, and you're going to hear from some incredible leaders in the work that they're doing, right, is really helping to build the bridges for the future and success in the future. So we've got a panel here joined by 3 leaders who are driving change in their organizations. We're going to talk a little bit about how organizations like Meta and Toyota are approaching XR initiatives within their organizations, as well as what's happening in the auto industry. Talk a bit about some of the challenges, as well as the opportunities along the way. Touch a little bit on how some of these folks up here are thinking about demonstrating impact and ROI, and then leave with some considerations that hopefully you all will be able to take back and bring to your organizations, your partners, your customers in the journeys that you're in. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce the panelists up here. So starting on the far side, Matt Hooper. Matt leads our internal technology program management team at Meta, really driving a lot of our XR initiatives. He provides high-level strategy leadership around XR. Matt has been with the organization for a number of years, so his work both on Oculus and Meta has really been focused on unlocking new levels of immersion with VR, and his focus now is thinking about how to bring that into the enterprise and open up new ways of working. Anitha, here on our side, Anitha Mercy leads Meta's automotive category, spends a lot of time focusing around how to drive commercial partnerships and growth in the industry, but also working closely with partners, right, to think about creative new ways to move the industry forward. Anitha also focuses a lot on DE&I and advancing the community space, both in terms of startup communities around women in mobility as well. And then Dave Kleiner from Toyota North America. Dave is an immersive tech manager at their applied tech lab there, focused really around how to bring the industrial metaverse to life. Also interesting to note, Dave has 2 patents in AR and 4 more that are pending. Yep. Excellent. So really excited for the conversation today. Maybe to start off, hopefully the caffeine has kicked in. I think it's been a pretty lively audience today, but I always love to shake things up a bit. So maybe we can do 1 clap if you've launched a new XR initiative in the last 6 months. Excellent. Okay, and let's go double clap if you plan to launch one in the next 6 months. Okay, wonderful, fantastic. All right, just to get the blood flowing a little bit. Okay, so let's dive on in. We're going to talk a little bit about XR in the enterprise. And Matt, I'll start maybe with you. Could you talk a little bit about some of the teams within Meta that are using AR, VR, and some of the use cases that are coming to life?
Yeah, when we formed this internal group that was focused on empowering anybody across our organization that was looking to do anything with XR technology, I didn't realize the outpouring and the reach and the number of problems that people had and they wanted to apply this XR technology. So we have some of the usual suspects, L&D groups. I've been involved in L&D and kind of immersive training. It was one of the biggest use cases in enterprise that we saw right away for the last half decade or so. And even before that, we've seen the industry studies. So that one made sense to us. And we have a spectrum across Meta. We have very targeted L&D use cases, like hard skill training inside of a data center. And then we have these centralized, whether it be diversity, equity, and inclusion, or some of the general training. And all of them, I think we're making meaningful differences with XR technology. And then one of the surprising things has been our partnership with LifeAt, our benefits group. They have a lot of programs that are meant to empower productivity in a different way by wellness initiatives, and just explaining what benefits are available, making your job easier on that side. And I hadn't realized that when we first formed this group, but we have a lot of different programs with that group. We started a pilot last year with 50 employees, where we're giving them different apps to help with mindfulness. That went so well that we've since expanded that to 450, and we plan on making it, we're wrapping research around this and we want to learn. But this could be something that rolls out to the entire organization. Then we have our data center customers, and this is where we're talking about AR, MR, VR across the board. There's everything from the hard skill trainings, there's some soft skill trainings, and there's using AR in these new and interesting ways in the industrial way. So that's just 3 examples. But I can't think of a part of our organization that hasn't been touched by this technology in some way.
Awesome. I know we were chatting a little bit behind stage too, just about some of the industrial use cases. So Dave, maybe you could share a little bit about the work that you and the team are exploring at Toyota.
Okay, so recently we finished doing a deployment across Toyota Logistics Services, so coast to coast. And what they do is not only they deliver the vehicles, but before they do that, they customize it or accessorize it for the end customer. And what we have is a twofold problem where we have a number of new vehicles coming online, and then we also have a number of new employees that are starting up too. So now how do we train the existing employees plus all the new ones? So we decided to move into an AR type environment where we put the training into a headset. Individuals will put on the headset, and then they have all the instructions right there at the tip of their fingers. And what that allowed us to do now is maximize our trainers. So instead of having a one-to-one relationship, we now have a one-to-many relationship. So one trainer can effectively train many people. And that's allowed us to, how about that? Okay. So then by maximizing the instructors, we've now accelerated our training, which then allows us to accelerate our ability to put product into the marketplace. So that's really been helpful for us.
Fantastic. And Anitha, I know we talked a little bit about, or some of the conversations today have also talked about new ways to engage customers and consumers right in the metaverse. Would love to maybe hear your take on the work you're doing with clients in the industry in terms of new ways of marketing, new ways of advertising, and where you see that going.
Absolutely. Let me share a couple of different type of perspective, one from the Meta side and one as a sales and marketer side. At Meta, we believe that digital advertising has evolved to mobile, right, in the past 10 years, and that's what's expected to happen with the metaverse. For a while, though, 2D apps is going to be the fundamental way to reach or an entry point to the metaverse. You'll be surprised when I say a ton of Fortune 50, Fortune 500 companies have not fully adapted to the breadth and scale of what 2D apps can do in the consumer marketing or consumer experience today. Even within Meta, there are tools like Reels, some of the live shopping, shops, business messaging. Those are all built fundamentally on 2D apps to connect with the consumer, and I would say that's not been fully taken to the full advantage yet. Beyond that, the goal is to build bridges to the metaverse, like the conversation that we are having today, right? So in terms of metaverse, especially thinking about building those bridges, there are going to be some foundational pieces to make it right, and that is important to build now. To name a few, and you've been hearing that today in a lot of the conversations since morning. Things like digital commerce, things like creators and developers and tools being ready to build that, hardware and connectivity, those are going to be important foundational pieces. And then ads. Just like the rest of the internet, monetization will come in organically, but there will be a paid version, there'll be an ad-free version as well. But I have to reiterate the fact that it is very early stages and this is a long-term vision. And in order for Metaverse to reach its scale and potential, it's going to take a few years, and I'm excited about the full potential though. As a marketer, if I'm a marketer, to the marketing to the consumers, I would ask two questions to myself. And the first one would be, how have my consumers evolved? And my evolved consumer, do they value something different now? You know, actually the better question or a powerful question would be, what does my consumer do not value yet that they're not aware of, but once they see it, they'll fall in love with it? That's the role of the marketer, and that's what some of the companies are thinking about. And the second question I would ask is, how do I enhance my customer relationships today? Because now is the point to build that long-term value, and really some of the sales and marketing arms of organizations can be that voice and can do that, and it's an exciting space to be.
Awesome, thank you. We'll come back, you brought up a good point too around long-term value. We'll come back to that in just a sec. Matt, I'm going to go back to you. You talked a little bit about some of the teams at Meta that are using XR. Can you share a little bit about some of the methodology and the thinking that the team has in terms of how they're approaching introducing XR, right, in an organization like this? Sure.
So I mentioned we get a lot of asks, and it comes from every corner of the organization. But not all of that asks make sense. They're not exactly right. We're educating our customers as we go here, and I'm calling them customers, but these are our internal partners. We form these partnerships with the different groups. So when we get an ask, we have a pretty lengthy intake process where we discuss the value, and it starts right there. We have to focus on value. This technology is a high, it's very high in novelty, and people get excited about it, and they want to be a part of it. But we break it down. We try to figure out what is the problem they're solving. A good example of something that has obvious value would be our data center customer. We spend billions of dollars building these data centers around the world. And they do it in a traditional way, and they're always exploring different technology. But you know, if you know anything about BIM modeling and this construction process, you want to spot problems before you lay the concrete over where the cables belong. So they have different tools to do that. But VR is an obvious direction you can go. You can stand that up. You can have these collaborative reviews in real time. You can give groups that were down the line a glimpse at these construction models before they ever had a chance before. So that's a powerful thing, and it's easy to point to the millions of dollars you can save using that technology. We had a recent ask where a group came to us, this is on the other side of it, they came to us and they wanted to do, teach people, it was a language-based effort, like an L&D project where we would teach people language. It was an interesting concept, and there is some proven value along those directions, but there are no customers for that. So it was a good idea that just didn't have a place inside of our organization. So we'll put that in a backlog. Maybe we have a little bit of investigation on you know, do a concept review of where this could fit, and then we put it away. So number one, we're focused on value. Then the other thing we try to do is make sure we understand the full process. You can have high value inside the headset, and that's right here. But you need to figure out the whole user journey from what happens outside the headset. It could be scheduling on some programs. It could be software and hardware onboarding, what happens after, how do you wrap research around it, how do you make sure you're compliant with legal and data privacy, all of that stuff. So we consider the entire process. And then we also, the third element I would say is we have a graduated, a kind of stepped approach. We don't tackle everything at once. We try to demonstrate value where it exists. We pull out the pieces that we know will help us demonstrate that value with research. But maybe we don't do the deeper integrations until further down the line. So proof of concepts, pilots, then maybe you expand the pilot. Again, demonstrating value along the way, meeting with our stakeholders, making sure we're still on track. But the full integration, we build with durability and scalability in mind, but we don't always tackle every problem all at once.
Thanks, Matt. Dave and Anitha, I'm going to turn us in a different direction. Sorry for the auto joke there, but both of you have spent time in the auto industry and come from different perspectives. So maybe, Anitha, maybe if you want to kick us off, what are some of the ways that you're seeing AR and VR show up on the road and in our cars?
Such an exciting space. I think even outside when we were walking in, we saw some of the automotive examples, and we were like giggling, look at that, look at how automotive is ahead of its game and when compared to a lot of industries. I definitely believe that. And in a lot of our cars today, like speed limit sensor, automatic stop, lane assist, all of these are some versions of AR already that you're seeing on the road now. It's what I'm very, very excited about is what AR and VR can truly unlock for safety features in the car. Some of these automotive OEMs are already ahead of the game, like I said, and to name a few, Nissan's invisible to visible tech, they call it the IV tech. They use some of these sensors to predict some of the potential hazards on the road that's not visible to the naked eye, and Toyota has a lot of examples like that too. Dave could share a bit more on that. Nissan has also taken some of the metaverse applications and some of the examples that we saw in videos today, where when a driver is driving, a passenger could be in an avatar version, having a friend or a family member, so there's no longer lonely car drivers out there, but you have an avatar version. Think about the art of possibilities in the world of tourism, right? There are these innovations that's already happening. Porsche, Volvo, companies like that are already using smart glasses and headsets for repairs, troubleshooting, magnifying, zoom in and zoom out especially when they're in the design phase and things like that. Audi has introduced HoloRide, which is basically the headset when it is worn by a passenger, kind of tunes to motion sensor and location aware. So when the driver is pushing the brakes or turning left or right, the person who's wearing the headset actually imagines and sees the world that's tuned to the location-aware and motion sensor techniques. And let's not forget about the technology companies like Apple has shared that's going to be an AR-embedded windshield. They already have FaceTime and iPhone, and think about, they've shared that there could be potential applications like video conferencing and the different types of communication. Of course, it shouldn't be a distraction. That's very, very key. There's a huge windshield out there, and think of video conferencing. But I think they're all trying to find ways on how to make this effective, highly usable in utility and value, and it's an exciting space to be, right? And all of these have to come in full package for the self-driving cars and autonomous driving, because all of these components of AR should be 10x'd to realize the vision of self-driving technology in the future.
Thank you. Yeah, there's certainly a convergence happening here. I know, Matt, you talked about the example of, obviously, from a data center use case, you want to be able to spot errors right earlier in the process before you lay the concrete. Dave, I know we were chatting a little bit. Obviously, the design process, right, for the automotive industry has some similarities there. Can you talk a little bit about how you're seeing AR and VR at that stage of the journey?
Right. So, all the vehicles start out as basically as a virtual vehicle. There's nothing physical there. So the designers will work in a virtual environment, usually a gaming engine, and build out the vehicle before an engineer ever sees it to say, oh, we can actually build this. And that's actually the beginning of our digital pipeline, is this, what comes out of the design phase will then filter all the way through to finally assembly and sales of the vehicle. So we want to reuse that content from the very beginning all the way to the end. And then, like you were saying earlier, the existing sensors on the vehicle, the ADAS sensors, are being used now to start driving AR content, either on your multi-purpose display or projected up onto your windshield as a AR HUD type of scenario. And that, again, is just to make us more or better drivers, basically. We want safe drivers that will live a long time and buy multiple cars. That's what we're all about here, is we want that resale happening. But where this journey also takes us then is into a pre-sale type environment where someone wants to learn something about a vehicle, and we're using those same assets all the way through and pulling it early into the relationship where someone wants to learn about a car. They can still go into a 2D environment and kind of have an immersive experience through like a WebGL type experience. You'll be seeing this coming out with the next couple of vehicles we're launching, like the Crown, which we'll be launching next month. You'll see that happening where you can have this virtual 2D type experience the vehicle, be able to do the walk around, see what's happening, do X-ray vision, and really get to know the car before we even see it in person. And we want that bond to happen early in that life cycle. And that's kind of how we're doing the whole life cycle of digital assets from design to pre-sale.
Great. I know we've heard a number of great examples already in this conversation, as well as this morning. And I think we've got a room full of folks who believe firmly right in the power of AR and VR. But that doesn't mean the journey is without its bumps along the way. And so I'd love to kind of maybe shift gears a little bit and talk about some of the challenges, some of the roadblocks that you all are facing, you're seeing, and how to overcome. So maybe, Matt, I'll kick off with you. What do you see as some of the biggest challenges when trying to adopt XR in a large enterprise organization?
Yeah, so this is obviously pretty disruptive technology, and as you mentioned, we're all in this business and trying to figure this out. The biggest challenges I've seen with Meta being a large enterprise, first and foremost, is hardware security. We need a credible enterprise compliance solution, and our bar is pretty high. And along with the hardware security, which means an MDM solution, we also have the software, the content, data collection, and privacy. We have layers of that where we can map that to existing governance, existing policy, but it's not quite right for this XR technology. So we've been working with our internal groups that are responsible for those policy and guidelines. And we've come up with a set of things that we're using for XR technology. But that's one of the big points of friction, is making sure we have enterprise compliant devices, hardware, software, data, content, distribution, all of that. Then the second part that I consider a challenge is the logistics. We have to be able to deliver these headsets to who needs it and when, and with that comes support. We have such great groups that do it with the traditional technology, but we need to do it for XR because it doesn't exist today. And then we have probably what a lot of people in here deal with is just awareness. We can come up with the best solution. We can take these use cases, run a pilot, rapid research, and we need to take that and make sure all of the internal groups know it exists, because it's not something that they've seen before. So we have this awareness challenge that we try to do with either targeted education or sometimes across the board. And then finally, it's just lowering the friction. Everything about this technology, you're leaving the real world and putting on a headset in VR's case. We're adding these hardware pieces that people aren't familiar with. So there's a lot of friction. And I mentioned how we take a look at the entire user journey, and we just try to spot friction across the board and figure out ways to remove it. But I think in general, there's lots of little friction along the entire process.
Thanks, Matt. Dave, I'm curious, based on that, does some of that resonate? What are some of the big hurdles that you're seeing, let's say, along the road to AR and VR within Toyota?
Yeah, I lived it. Everything Matt said is true. So we did the same thing. We did the proof of concept, the pilot, and then we rolled into our first production. And as we were rolling into production, we really had to do white glove treatment. We had to go sit down with the MDM folks, say, okay, this is the device. It looks just like a Windows machine. How would you enroll this? Let's go through a couple of sample enrollments. Okay, we got that nailed down. Now let's go to our first site. We have some new people who've never seen this before. We got to get them comfortable with the device, how to use it, learn the hand gestures, and then, oh, guess what? We're going to add burden to you. You have to create the content because you're the instructor. And that was basically about why our whole system is a success, is that we've taken it to the subject matter experts, and we said you're also the content creators. So we have user-generated content as the core of this. And it's both on our Toyota logistics side and also on our manufacturing side, where our SMEs that are years of experience, we want them to create this content and then teach the next generation. And it takes a little bit of hand-holding to get someone who's not very computer savvy to begin with to now give them, in this case it was a HoloLens with guides, and say, now you're going to be a guides author. It takes about 8 hours really to get them comfortable with it, and then another 8 hours where they're running on their own. So we were able to do this rather quickly, and it's amazing how people can adopt to this technology. Once they get over the fear factor, within that first hour, they're afraid of it. They don't want to touch it. You get them in there, you get them to do some fun things with it. Now it's all of a sudden it becomes part of them. They start discovering things that I didn't even tell them about, features, sets, and it's amazing to see the light bulb come on and your colleagues just run with this new tech, and they come up with use cases I hadn't even thought about. So it becomes infectious almost. And then they go and they tell their colleague, and then now you have a request for another HoloLens or another headset and more guide access, and it just kind of grows quickly. So this model's happened everywhere we've went. So if I went to a manufacturing facility, I was in a paint shop teaching them how to use it. Next thing I know, Body Welds knocking on my door saying, hey, we want to use it too. We saw what's happening there. And that's usually how it goes. It's word of mouth. It's someone sees it, they have an idea, saying, I can use that in my scenario. And that's something we don't, as headquarter guys, we don't see that. We're too far removed from the actual field works, and we can't possibly imagine all those use cases. So backing up, we have to do our homework ahead of time. Like Matt said, how do we get it to that person? Can they enroll it? And then do they have the knowledge to build their own content? If I can solve those three problems, I can let them run with it, and they will. There's no stopping it once you let it loose. You can't roll it back, that's for sure. We had one manager that wanted to roll it back because he thought they were taking too much time playing with these new devices. Well, that didn't go over well. The devices are there to stay.
I love the point that you mentioned around, like, it becomes infectious, right? Then that sort of builds a groundswell of energy. So this is kind of maybe a good segue to the next point. It is a disruptive technology, right? And we are sort of early in this journey, and so more and more there's such an importance, right, of demonstrating impact, showing ROI. So maybe, Dave, I'll sort of stick with you. What are some of the the metrics that you're looking at as you think about how are we moving the needle? How is this moving forward? Would love to hear your thoughts to start off. Sure.
Initially, we had all the wrong metrics. When we did our pilot, we thought we had these measures. We started measuring, and we were trying to measure tact time. And it turns out for experienced employees, it was slowing them down because it was taking them too long to interact with the software and the hand gestures. And we go, how could this be? All our research said this is supposed to make things faster. So then we backed up and said, okay, what are we doing wrong here? And we actually let the instructors kind of tell us what's wrong. And they said, for someone who knows how to do their job and they just need a refresh, a quick upskill, I said, just give them the high level, let them run with it, and the muscle memory will come. They just need to know what the difference is. Muscle memory will take over. So sure enough, we backed off and said, okay, we pulled someone in who was on a rotation, hadn't done the job in about 3 months. They went through the HoloLens, the guides program really quickly and said, oh, yeah, these are the three things that are different. I got it. Put the HoloLens down. He was running on his own. No defect. I'm like, wow, that's what we have to measure. We're measuring tact time when we should have been measuring defect rate. And then the other thing that was really important was time to train. We cut our time to train from almost in half. It all depends on the students. Some folks it was more, but on average it was in half. So instead of having someone being handheld or observed for 8 installs, they could do it in 4 and go solo. And that's really what the impact was. How quickly can we get someone to go solo? Because now we can free up the instructor, then go train someone else, or to then have someone come cross-train and do a different line. So if you had someone that was working in a specific function, we knew that they had a base skill set, we can upskill them quickly to go do something else. And that allowed the plant manager some flexibility so they can surge now without having to hire additional people. They can take folks from an area that was running slow and put them on, or was running fast and they didn't have as much backlog, put them into another line where there was backlog without having to retool the whole shop and get the work done. So yeah, speed was basically our metric. Anything that allowed us to go faster.
Thanks, Dave. Anitha, I'll flip to you. From your work with clients, what are some of the key metrics that you see them, looking at when you talk to them about sort of ROI and sort of orienting around like driving value? What are you seeing today, and where do you see that maybe shifting?
Yeah, when sales and marketing, it's all about ROI, right? Return on investment. But the conversation that we are talking or having with inspiring them to think about is ROI in terms of return on innovation, not return on investment. Because we heard from Matt and Dave about quality. It's pretty clear and evident that AR and VR today can improve the quality of products, period. I think there are so many brilliant examples where we are seeing using these immersive technology, the quality of the product is going to be much, much better. When the quality is good, customers buy those products, right? And then combine that with competitive advantage, because believe it or not, most of the companies are already thinking about it and already thinking about how to bring immersive technology. So there is a major risk of inaction. Oh, that's another ROI. There is a major risk of inaction if companies do not embrace the technology. So quality times competitive advantage is equal to revenue. That's the straightforward equation that we constantly talk to some of these companies. And in order for that to happen, the first one is to embrace that and bring those immersive technology into the workforce on the day-to-day level, be it design or sales and marketing or customer service or loyalty. There are fantastic applications that can be used to up-level to where we are right now. So first step is to bring that into the workforce and make it an everyday, day-to-day thing so that it can be brought to the consumers and to their products.
Thanks. And Matt, I'm going to flip to you. I'm curious, again, when you think about the work that's happening now, like, what does success look like to you, right? If we were having this conversation a year from now, where do you hope that things have gotten to?
Because we're spread across the entire organization, it's actually a different question and answer for each different group. One thing I learned really early is I don't know all the answers. So to some of these areas, if we're working with health and well-being, and let's say we're empowering people to lose weight through Supernatural and Beat Saber, that area is not an area I'm an expert in. So what we do is we partner with our internal customers. They know the most about that space. And we really try, again, identify what's the problem, what are we actually trying to solve. And sometimes we go one step beyond where we partner with external research firms and really try to nail the value proposition. So it's not a one-size-fits-all answer. There's some easy things like the data center example with the preview on the construction models. But other times, if it's like diversity, equity, and inclusion, measuring the business impact of that is difficult. It's less tangible. So we really just try to understand the problem and work with our customers to figure out the best way to measure the success.
I'm going to do a quick follow-up question there. Certainly some of the use cases, right? The impact may be a bit more intangible. What are some of the ways that you have found have helped inspire leaders within the organization, right, to sort of see that value more clearly?
Again, it goes back to the research, meaningful research, real research. Even though I'm up here, I'm representing Meta, I've been with Reality Labs forever, I'm a customer of the solutions of the hardware. Like, I'm a believer in this for a different reason. Again, I mentioned the very first question or the second question, we don't take on projects where we don't see a value or a real problem to solve. So I say that if you do that, if you focus on value initially, if you try to ask a question that is impactful if you solve it, and you wrap that with the right measurables, then it's an easy thing to sell leadership. So that's what we go to, this full package. We did this for this reason. Here are our results. Let's move it forward.
And Dave, curious just from your experience, similar, how have you kind of tried to help some of the leaders internally, sort of bring them on that journey also?
Yeah, I mean, with some of our leaders, they still view this as a game, and that's one of the downfalls. I think it started out in the gaming industry, and it was great. It was a lot of fun, but it makes it difficult to have a corporate leader take it seriously. And so that's why we started with some practical applications like training. And when they saw that it had use, I think that allow us now, it opens the doors for other practical applications. They're willing to listen and adopt it, whether it's headsets-based XR or web-based XR, they're now open to it. They say, yeah, there's some practical use here. But I had to have that first win to do it.
Were there any responses or surprises along the way that you weren't maybe expecting as sort of some of these leaders started to progress on that journey?
Yeah, again, it went viral on me. So once we had deployed across our TLS environment and everyone was now training in this new way, next thing I'm getting calls from our host country, our parent organization in Japan. I don't even know these people, and they're asking me, "Oh, how do you deploy this solution? Can you deploy it over here? And what about deploying it on another continent?" I'm going, "Well, sure. Give me an airline ticket, and I'll help you with that." But yeah, I wasn't expecting a response like that. So success kind of leads to more success, and that's really what happened here.
Fantastic. Well, I know it's hard to believe we're quickly coming up on time. So maybe in 30 seconds or so, I'm going to go around the horn here. And Anitha, I'll start with you. But we've got folks obviously who are doing incredible work here today, right? Whether that's within their organizations, whether that's with customers and partners. Some maybe are further down the journey. Some might be thinking about how to get started. What's one final piece of advice you'd leave everybody today?
You've probably heard the word value. Every time we say value, that I think value over novelty any day. Yes, it's going to look innovative and creative and cool to bring VR into workspaces, but if it's not fundamentally connecting to a business problem, then that's of waste. So I think value over novelty any day.
I have to agree. It has to solve a business dilemma, and otherwise it's just not going to go anywhere.
I think we're now at a point, too, where 5 years ago, there weren't a lot of meaningful examples you could point to. There were a few research, there was some good data, but it was much more difficult to put on a headset and experience these things. But now you've seen just presentation after presentation. You can walk this floor, every conference has it. I think there's enough examples where if you want to get started, you can just go to the different vendors and experience some of this stuff for yourself, because it's difficult to follow until you actually are immersed in the technology. So I would do that. I think there's a lot of meaningful examples now versus, 5 or 6 years ago.
So I heard value over novelty, has to solve a business dilemma or business problem, and really sort of immerse yourself right in the technology, as well as the examples that we have now seen say compared to a few years back. Excellent. Well, I think we are just about out of time. I think that's going to be a wrap. But before we go, I want to give a big thank you to Matt, Dave, and Anitha for your time and perspective today. And a big thank you to you all here today, and for those who are watching us virtually as well. We'll be around, so hopefully we can continue these conversations throughout the day and over the next few days. And a big thank you again. We look forward to building the future together. And thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.